Good afternoon, my fellow friends and YouTubers. This is Kurt, and welcome back to the Kurt's Place channel here on the YouTube. We're back down in my basement game room, and this time I'm actually going to have a video showing you how to install a visual pinball table on your visual pinball cabinet. Now, what I'm going to do is I've had a number of people ask me, how do you go about installing a visual pinball table on your cabinet? Now, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm actually going to show you where I go to download the table images, and also where I go to download the ROM images and the media images and the table videos and everything I used to set up the pinballs that you see on my channel. I'm actually going to be focusing on the VP Forums website, because that is the go-to site for pinball, for the visual pinball machines that I have on my channel. I think you're going to learn a lot, and it's going to be a lot of fun as well. I want to mention, if you want to go ahead and click that subscribe button, feel free to do so, that we can keep up with all my current videos. If you have any questions or comments, leave those at the end of the video as well. And also, if you like what you see, go ahead and click that like button as well. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. Okay, now I'm actually going to show you how I go about loading a visual pinball table into my cabinet, where I go to get the ROMs and things, and also how you go about putting them in the folders and naming them to getting the game installed. Okay. Now, what I was going to mention is the first thing you want to do when you do this is you want to make sure you have a folder like this. You want to make sure you have a folder that's nice and clean, that doesn't have anything in it. This is what you're going to use to download your files into. Now, I actually have the folders on my computer under downloads. That's where I'm going to be downloading all these VP visual pinball files I'm going to be using. Now, what we're going to be focusing on today is I'm actually going to download Dungeons and Dragons. That's one of the tables I don't have yet. I did a little research and found out that all the folders and everything I need are on the VP Forum site. So I'm actually going to show you how to go about doing that. Okay. Now, first thing we're going to do is, once you know you have a clean folder like I have here, okay, the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you have a extractor program. Now, I have a program called JZip that I use. That's this program right here. What JZip is going to do is JZip is going to allow you to go ahead and open up and extract these folders that come in various forms, such as rares and other things. You need something to be able to open up these folders. JZip is what I actually use to open up these rare folders and things. I use a program called JZip. Now, there's other programs you can get on the internet as well for doing this, but I actually prefer JZip for this application. And this is what you're going to use when you download folders from the VP Forum site. Sometimes they're going to come in rare form, and in order to extract those and open those, you need to have a program. That's what I use JZip for. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to the VP Pinball site right now. I'm going to show you what the VP Pinball site looks like. Okay, so now what we have in front of us now is we actually have this is a site that I go to. This is called, if you want to visit this page, go to www.vpforums.org. This is the actual page I go to download all my tables and videos and things that you see on my channel. Now, you're going to notice on here, one thing I'm going to point out to you, you're going to notice on here that they have a welcome screen. This is a positively wonderful site that has been invaluable to allowing me to have all the games I have. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I want to read something on here that is important to keep in mind. Okay. Now, they have a welcome page. It says, it says welcome to the gaming community. Now, one of the things you want to keep in mind, they do have a thing on the bottom. It says attention. This is important to note. It says attention all VPM members and users. If you purchased a virtual pinball machine, hard drive, flash drive, or DVD that contains tables and ROMs from our site or any other visual pinball site, when you received it, you have purchased an illegal product. Return it for a full refund. Our authors and contributing members work hard and provide for free all the content you paid for. This only serves to upset our contributors and will likely cause them to stop sharing their work we all enjoy. It is unethical and illegal to include their works in any commercial product. Thank you. Now, what they mean by this is if you buy a visual pinball cabinet and you're buying folders and things that have been installed from this website, pre-installed on the computer that you can run, that's what they're saying. They're saying that that's illegal. Everything that I have on my cabinet, none of this was pre-installed. I installed all these by hand myself. That's one thing to keep in mind. That's one of the reasons I have this warning on here. Is if you're buying a cabinet that has all the games and things pre-installed from the site, that's the reason why they're warning you about that. You want to be aware of that, what they said about this warning here on the bottom. Okay. Now, what I'm going to show you now is I'm actually going to show you what the top of the folders and everything are. Now, we're mainly going to focus on downloading a pinball, but I'm going to show you that they have on the top of the VP forum site. There's a getting started page. This has installation guides and other various things that you want to use. Script files, NVRAMs, also sound samples, everything that you need to get your visual pinball cabinet going. That's what this is used for here. Okay, that's what's going to be in here. There's installation guides. Now also, if you need tutorials, there's going to be tutorials. This is going to tell you how to install your pinball machine and set it up. Now understand, I've gone through all these tutorials at least a dozen times in the years I've been building pinball cabinets. These have been very helpful. Now the next folder we're going to have is going to be visual pinballs. Now this is going to be one of the folders we're going to be accessing to get ROMs and things, and also the tables and everything that we're going to be installing. Now front ends and back glasses. That's one of the things that's going to have the DB2 animated back glasses, topper images, wheel logos, complete media packs. This is another one that we're going to be accessing. Now the next one over is future tables. Now I don't have any future tables right now on my cabinet, so I'm not going to be using this. Now they have design resources. This is going to have things when you go to design resources. This is going to have things such as table images, playfield images, all sorts of things, guides. You know, how do you use virtual pinball, all these different guides and things. Future pinball table guides, future pinball table resources. Okay. Now the next one over is going to have more. That's going to have things. This is going to tell you about different interviews and things that they've had with different pinball manufacturers and things like that over the years. I find this to be very, very interesting as well. Now the interviews that you're going to see on here, these are actual people that actually have made tables for the Visual Pinball site. Now keep in mind, these people on the Visual Pinball site, they get my full respect because they spent hours, days, even years designing some of the tables that I really enjoy. All starting out with a basic template. Now, if you go to my site, you're going to notice a thing called Visual Pinball Setup. That's going to actually tell you how Visual Pinball works and how to actually set up a table. Keep in mind, they all started using that and then to create these masterpieces that you see on here. And this really is a labor of love that they have. Now, you're going to notice view new content. Now, that's going to have, whenever they have new content, that'll be under here as well. Okay? Now, what we're going to focus on right now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to focus on actually downloading a table. Now, the one thing, keep in mind, the first thing I like to do when I go to Visual Pinball tables is I like to download the animated backglass first. So if you go to front end media and backglass, okay, you're going to see a thing over here that says DB animated backglasses. That's the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to go to DB2 animated backglasses. Okay. Now, when we click on DB2 animated backglasses, you're going to have all your letters and things are going to be here. Now we're going to be downloading. This time we're going to be downloading Dungeons and Dragons. So we're going to go to our D's. Okay. Now you're going to notice that on the left-hand side, this actually will tell you what you're under. Right now we're in the DB2S animated backglasses. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find the one for Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. Now you're going to also notice that there's dozens and dozens of different backglasses. Now one of the things I like to do is I don't necessarily like to jump right to the name. I actually like to be able to go through the different names as I'm looking for my folder, because sometimes I find out pinball machines I don't actually have are in here, and it gives me ideas on new ones that I might want to add. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump to the Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now you got to see there's things like Doctor Who. Now these are all animated backglasses. These are the ones where you have lights and things on. That's what these are for. Okay. Now, if we go to the end, okay, we're going to have Dungeons and Dragons. Now, you're going to see Dungeons and Dragons Valley 1987. That's actually what we're looking for. So what we're going to do is, okay, what we're going to do, let me see. We're going to, now you notice there's two of them here. There's Dungeons and Dragons, Static DBS Quick and Dirty No Lights. What that means is they just took an image of the backglass, but they don't have any lights or things to go with it. Now, if you can, if it is available, I suggest that you get the ones that are animated, like this one here. Okay, so we're going to say Dungeons and Dragons to DB2S. Now, depending on how your pinball cabinet's set up, some people like to use a thing called the Ultra VP server. I prefer to use the direct backglasses, the DB2S backglasses. I just find for my cabinet that they work better. But keep in mind, there are other files and ways and things you can set up your pinball cabinet. If you look into those how to set up your pinball things I showed you on top, they'll show you other ways to set these up as well. Right now we're focusing on the DB2S backlash. So we're gonna say Dungeons and Dragons DB2S backlash. We're gonna click on that. Okay. Now what they're gonna do is they're actually gonna have an image, and now they're also gonna have a thing too. They'll actually have reviews of what people thought of the tables as well. Okay, on the bottom here. You also can leave a review yourself if you want as well. Okay. Now the one thing I wanted to point out that I forgot to tell you, in order to be on VP Forums, you do have to be a member. You have to sign up for VP Forums. There is an area there that you sign up for. When you first come to VP Forums, there's going to be an area there where you sign up for VP Forums. And then once you're signed up, then you're going to actually have a name like I have here. Okay, on top, you'll actually have a name. Now, I was showing you how we do the Dungeons and Dragons, okay? Now we're running Dungeons and Dragons DB2S 1.0. Now, what we're going to do is, it's going to show you a backlash image, what it looks like. This is the first thing that we want to do. We want to go ahead and download this, okay? Now, we're going to download that into our folder. This is going to go, if you remember that folder I showed you, it's going to go into that. Now, something you're going to find is when you download backglasses, occasionally you're going to have two different versions of backglasses. You're going to have a regular backglass and you're going to have a fantasy backglass. The fantasy backglass gives it special lights like LEDs and things that the table might not normally have. If you go to the real backglass, that's going to be the one that comes with the standard pinball machine that you have. Now this time we only have one choice, so we're just going to go ahead and click the download button. We're going to download that into our folder. Okay, that's going to go ahead. Should be loaded up. Should be loaded up in a second into the folder. Okay. Now once you see the download folder like that, that means it's been downloaded. Now what I do, just to be on the safe side, I like to check my folder. So I'm going to go to my downloads folder again. I'm going to make sure that it's in there. As you can see, I have Dungeons and Dragons in here. Okay, that folder's in there already. Okay. Now what I like to do now is I like to go to my JZip folder. I like to go to my JZip extractor I showed you, and you click on JZip. Okay. There's going to be a thing that says Open Archive, okay, and then you say Dungeons and Dragons, and then you're going to say Extract. Now what that's going to do is that's actually going to extract it's going to actually extract the folder out of the one that I downloaded. And as you can see now, this is a zip folder. You have to get these folders out of the zip folders in order to use them. Now as you can see, by using that extractor, I now have the Dungeons and Dragons DBS on top. It says Dungeons and Dragons Direct B2S. Now what I do now is I'll delete the original folder that I had it in. I just delete that. Now that I have it extracted, I just delete that. Now we have the direct backglass. Okay. Now we're going to go back to the site. Now what we're going to try to do now is we're going to actually try to download the table. Okay. So if you go to the top of the site, you go to Visual Pinball Tables. Now keep in mind, different ones you have different options for downloading tables. Now I'm using VP9 tables on my cabinet. There's also VP8 desktop tables and VP9 desktop tables, depending on the setup that you have. I actually use the VP9, so I'm going to say VP9 cabinet tables. I'm going to go to full screen cabinet. The reason why this is full screen is I'm using a full screen cabinet because all my tables are full screen. So I'm going to go to the full screen cabinets under VP9 cabinet tables. Okay, and once again, you're going to have letters that are going to appear here, and you're going to select the one that Dungeons and Dragons is in, which is under D. But as you can see, there's hundreds and hundreds of tables here on here as well. They're all arranged in alphabetical order, as you can see here. Okay, so I'm going to go to the D's. Okay, now you're going to notice there's a lot of different, like Demolition Man, Defender, Deadly Weapon, Devil Riders. There's a bunch of different titles on here for different games that they have. Now these are all the VP9. Now these are the actual VP tables that actually, the actual table that the machine is built on under Visual Pinball is what these are for. Okay, the backlash is used for the backlash image. This is actually used for the table image here that you're going to see. This is the actual table that people have made. And normally what they're going to have is they're going to have the person that made the table underneath. They're going to give them credit for the person that made the table underneath. It'll have the name of the table, plus it'll have who made the table. So just keep that in mind when you go, that all these different people have contributed to these works on this page. That's why they want to make sure if you buy a table that you don't have these preloaded. They want people to get credit for their work. That's one of the reasons why they want you to make sure that you go to the site here to get these. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to skip ahead to the DUs so I get to Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. Now, what we're going to focus on is, now that I'm at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see there's a thing called Dungeons & Dragons Full Screen VP 9.21, okay? This is what we need. So what we're going to do is, it's also going to tell you how many people have downloaded the file as well. So when you click on Dungeons & Dragons, okay, you're going to have reviews on the table as well. This is different reviews and things that people have given. Also, you're going to find if people have problems on the tables, for example, maybe the ball doesn't work, or one of the plungers doesn't work, or the ball gets hung up, you're going to find under this review here that they'll tell you different things here to help you out if you're having any problems. Okay. Now what we're going to do is when you click on this right here, underneath the table, under Dungeons & Dragons, there's going to be a little log here. This is going to tell you basically improvements and things that they've done on the table here, as you can see here on the left here. It's also going to tell you how they made the table and things like that and how it was created. Okay? All right, now what you're going to want to do on here now is if you want to see what a table image what the actual image looks like, if you click on the table, this will actually show you what the table image is going to look like when it's loaded on your virtual pinball cabinet or your visual pinball cabinet, as you can see here. This actually shows you what it's going to look like. Okay. Okay. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to go here. We're going to go ahead and download that. Okay. Now this time when you click the download button, what you're going to notice is you're going to notice that in this case there's two different titles. There's a Dungeons and Dragons 1.2a and there's a Dungeons and Dragons 1.3. What I found is I usually try to download the most recent one. Normally the higher the number, the more recent it is versus 1.3 versus 1.2. However, sometimes you may find that the lower one will work better on your table. It just depends on your setup. Now we're going to go ahead and download the Dungeons and Dragons 1.3. Okay, we're going to go and download that. Okay, now that's it. Now once again, I'm going to go back to my folder. I'm going to make sure I have it in there. Now as you can see, there's a folder here called DUD 1.3. Once again, I'm going to go to my JZip extractor. I'm going to say Open Archive. I'm going to extract Dungeons and Dragons. And as you're going to see here, there's some folders here. I'm going to say Extract. Okay, now I extracted it. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete the original folder. I don't need that anymore because I've extracted them. Okay. Now the XML file, what this is this actually is used if you want to do editing and things like that, you can use these. Now I actually do my own editing, so I don't use these in particular, but you can use those for editing purposes as well. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Okay, so now you see right now we have two folders right now. We have the backglass image and we have the playfield image. These are the two images that we need to make that we need for the table. You need the backglass image and you need the table image. Now the one thing we don't have is in order to play these you need to have the ROM images. That's going to be the next folder we're gonna go to. Okay. So if you go back to Visual Pinball on top, okay, there's going to be a thing under ROMs. Okay, you're actually going to click on ROMs. Okay, now depending on the year table that you have, some tables require ROMs, like from the 80s, and some do not. You're going to know if you go to ROMs whether or not it requires it because you'll see the ROM files listed. Anytime you download a pinball, even if it's an older pinball, I always go to the ROMs section just to make sure if I need ROMs I have them. If I don't, I know I don't because they won't be in here. So when I go to Dungeons and Dragons, same thing before, they're going to have the letters arranged. I go to D for Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now you're going to notice that there's hundreds and hundreds of different chips, of different ROM images and everything in here as well. Like for Defender, Demolition Man, you're also going to notice that there's different versions of the chips as well, depending on how you want to run them. Okay, now we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and skip ahead here to the Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, let's skip a little bit more. And now one of the main things too is once again, one of the reasons I like to look at these is I get a chance to try out new games and things by looking at these lists as well. That's one of the reasons I like to look at the ROMs. By seeing ROMs and things I don't know about, it might help me find games that I don't have. Okay. Now, what you're going to notice is we now have a Dungeons and Dragons ROM. This is the actual ROM to run the game. Okay. Now, I always like to, one thing keep in mind, when you find the file you're looking for, Dungeons and Dragons, always check the previous page to make sure there isn't a previous file on the previous page that you came to. Now, as you can see here, there isn't here in this case, so we don't need to worry. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to download the ROM. Okay? Okay, now we're going to click on the ROM. Okay, that's the ROM. Now, one of the things you want to do, now I'm going to go back to the folder and I'm going to find the ROM. Now, when you have ROMs like this, these are not extracted. These are actually pasted into your ROM folder under your Visual Pinball folder. I'm going to show you where that's at. What you want to do is you want to click on this. You don't want to don't ever change the names on these ROM files. Keep them exactly the way they are. We're going to be changing the names on the VP on the table file and the backlash, but not on the ROM. So what you want to do is you want to click the ROM file. You want to say copy. Okay. Now on my case, if I go to my Visual Pinball folder, okay, under my Visual Pinball folder, there's a thing called VPin MAME. VPin MAME is what is used to run the tables as well. It's also an integral part of Visual Pinball. You're going to click on VPin MAME, and then under there, there's going to be a bunch of folders, and then there's going to be one called ROMs. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to paste that folder I just copied. Okay. Under ROMs. Okay, now I have the Dungeons and Dragons ROM. Now, basically, everything I need now, I have everything I need now to basically play the game itself. Okay. Now, let me go ahead and show you let me go ahead and show you what we do next. Now, remember, keeping everything clean is important in this folder. So now that I got that downloaded, I got the Dungeons and Dragons ROM loaded. I go ahead and I delete that because I already have it installed. Now, you're going to notice. See how clean I keep everything? The reason why it's important to keep everything clean is when you go to redo renaming and things of these names and things, that's going to be very important. So always keep the desktop nice and clean like I have here when you're doing this. You don't want to have a lot of clutter here. You want to keep it clean. Okay, now we're going to go back to the Visual Pinball site. Now what we're going to do is now basically I have, with these things here, I have the ROM image loaded. I have the virtual pinball table for Visual Pinball table, and I have the backlash. Basically, now I have everything I need to run the table. As long as you have the ROM images, the Visual Pinball table images, and the backlash, you can run the table. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a backlash image if you don't want to use one for your table. I actually have mine set up because I really like the backlash images, and I find they add a lot of fun to the tables as well. Now, that's also if you're using a two-screen monitor. Also, that's where the backlash image also comes in handy if you're using a backlash monitor. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the VP forms. Now what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go to the front end media and backlash. Now what this is if you notice on my videos, like when I go to the different tables and things, I'll have an image of the backlash, and then I'll have a table image of it looking like it's actually running. That's where this folder comes in handy. Now this is where you don't have to have this unless you're using a front end. Like I am, unless you're using like Hyperpin or a front end, you don't necessarily have to download these. I do this because this is the front end I'm using. So I'm going to go to front end media and backlash. Okay, now the first thing you want to download the media pack. When you go to media packs, okay, you're gonna find a thing for complete media packs. You want to click on complete media packs. Okay, what that's going to do is once again, it's going to show you all these different games and things that they have. You just find the letter that corresponds to what you're learning. We're downloading Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now once again, you see all these different tables and things. This is another thing I was saying about wanting to look at all the different tables. Sometimes you'll find tables you didn't even know exist, but that's one of the things. I try to stick with tables that have visual media packs as well that go along with them, just because it makes it easier when I go to set up my wheel and things. Now, there are ways to rename files, download the table images, download the playfield images, the wheel images off the internet, and then just rename them based on the table that you're using. But I prefer to use the Hyperpin media packs on the site itself if they have one. Now, you're going to notice that Dungeons and Dragons is going to be towards the end. Okay. Now, there's Dungeons and Dragons media pack. Okay, that's what we need. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. Okay, now we have the Dungeons and Dragons Media Pack. Okay, now this is going to say it's going to tell you what it has. This says the Media Pack contains a backglass image, table image, wheel logo, 2 instruction cards, and a flyer. Now, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and download the Media Pack. So we're going to go ahead and download that. Okay, now we have the Media Pack. Okay, now once again we're going to go back to our folder and we're going to go and use JZip. We're going to go ahead and we're going to open that folder for the Media Pack. We're going to say extract. Okay, now you're going to notice now we want to go ahead and eliminate the original folder we had, the D&D we want to take out. Okay, now we're going to have a thing on here called Hyperpin. Now what Hyperpin is this is the thing that you use for your wheel. When you click on Hyperpin, okay, remember this is what that Media Pack can. You click on Hyperpin, you go to Media. Now you're going to notice there's 2 folders. There's a Hyperpin folder and there's a Visual Pinball folder. Now these are the actual folders that we have for the actual games. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. But before you do this, what you want to do now is now you have your Hyperpin and you want to go ahead and download the table video. That's the actual video that plays when you're running the games. Now what you want to do is you go to front end media backglass, same as we have before, you go to videos. Now we're going to go ahead and download the video. Now what the video is, that's the actual video that shows up when I go through the wheel and you see the table image actually playing. That's what I'm looking at here. And that's what's going to be under here. So we're going to go back to our D's, back to Dungeon. Okay, now one thing I wanted to point out, you're going to notice when you're under here, you're going to notice that there's different labels under the videos. There's different types of videos. Some people, for example, on their pinballs, they'll have animated backglasses where when they scroll through the list, it actually, the table image and the backglass are animated. That's what you're going to find here. You just have to find the name of the table and then it'll tell you what it corresponds to. For example, like Dead Hunters is a backglass video for future pinball. Then they also have a playfield video for future pinball. You just have to find the name that you're looking for. The visual pinballs and the future pinball files are all in the same folder as far as this is concerned. Now what you want to do is you want to find the one that corresponds to what you're using. So we're going to go to our Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now there's Doctor Who. See, they have backglass videos and then they have playfield videos. Okay, we're going to go to Dungeons. Should be one more. Should be at Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now there's Dungeons and Dragons Bally 1987. Now you're also going to notice if there's an older table and a newer table, normally they'll have the name of the table plus the year it was made here. Now what we're looking for is you don't want to download ones that are future pinball videos for, where it says Playfield Videos Future Pinball. They do have those, but since we're not using visual Future Pinball, we want to look for the visual pinball. So as you're going to see, it says Bally 19 HP video, and you always want to look for HP because that's high quality video if you can find that. Now you're going to see it. It says in Playfield Videos under Visual Pinball. That's what we're looking for. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to download that. Okay, once again, it's going to show you what the image what the part of the video looks like. You're going to say download. Okay, now what you're going to notice on here, you're going to have two different versions here. Sometimes you're going to have a daytime mod, and you're going to have a daytime version and a nighttime version, depending on how your table is themed. Now, on my particular table, I'm going to go with the original table depth on this because I did some research on this first, and I found out that this looked better on my cabinet than the other one. So I'm going to go to Dungeons and Dragons original table depth, and I'm going to go and download it. And this is where, depending on the type of table you're making, do you want to have nighttime versions of the table or daytime versions? You can find those here. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say download. Now it's going to download the actual video, the actual table playing. Now, one thing I didn't point out to you, I want to show you. If you go back to visual pinball tables where I showed you, you go to visual pinball tables and you go to full screen cabinet. If you remember, I showed you the VP9 tables that we had over here. Now, if you look on the left, there's actually one here called a VP9 mod cabinet table full screen. If you click on VP9 mod cabinet, what this is The folders I showed you originally, if you go to the VP9 cabinet tables full screen, these are the original works that were made when the original table was made. That's what these are. These are the original tables as they were made. What people do is you can actually mod tables, and that's why if you go to mod, if you go to VP cabinet mod, VP9 mod table, these are going to be mods. Now, I'll give you an example like Twilight Zone. Is a good. I'll just give it just to give an example what we're looking at. Okay. Now, if you go to Twilight Zone, okay, that's a classic example of what I was going to show you. Under Twilight Zone. Okay, let me go one more. Okay, now you see where it says Twilight Zone? There's an original Twilight Zone that's under the VP9 cabinet tables. Now we're in the mod section here, as you can see on the left. Now there's a thing called VP Twilight Zone Night Mod. Now what that is when you click on that, what that is this is actually what the table looks like at night. Somebody did a nighttime mod on it. You see how it looks like it's at night? That's called a night mod. This is basically the same table as you saw before, but they did modify mods to it to make it look a little more appealing for people that want to have night versions of their pinball tables. That's one of the nice things about visual pinball is you can have daytime versions and nighttime versions of your tables. Now, I primarily focus on daytime versions on my table because I normally like to play with the lights out, and I find that the daytime versions seem to work better on my table. But you're also going to see that there's reviews and things too as well under here as well. Okay. Now, what I want to do now is I think we have all the tables, all the folders now. We need to go ahead and set this table up. Okay. Now we're going to go. We're going to go ahead and check our folder one more time. Okay. Going to go to our download folder. Now you got to see Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to go ahead and use our JZip tool once again to extract these. Okay. Now we're going to say Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to say extract. Okay. Now what we have, we're going to remember, once you extract it, delete the original folder so you don't get confused. Okay, now you're going to see what we have here. Now we have, when you're done, you should have basically 4 folders when you're done. You should have a hyperpin folder. You should have the actual table folder where the actual table was made. You're going to actually have, now what F4V means, this is the actual video file that I actually used to make the videos on the table. We're not going to do anything with it, and we're going to have a backglass image. So remember, you should have 4 things when you're done. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to go ahead and we're going to download the files into the Visual Pinball, the folders and things. Now, when I click on your folder, you're going to have a thing called Hyperpin. Under Hyperpin, if you remember, I showed you on my table how I can see like backglass images and flyers and things. That's what's under this topic here. These are actually all coordinated to go along with the game. So we're going to go to Hyperpin, our Hyperpin folder we're going to open up. Now this is where Hyperpin is on my computer. Now you're going to see I have a thing called Media, okay? When you click on Media, there's all the folders. There's your Hyperpin and there's your Visual Pinball. That's going to correspond with this folder here that I just downloaded. As you can see, if I go to Media, under the folder I downloaded, there they are, Hyperpin and Visual Pinball. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take each one of these folders, as you see them here. Okay, now for example, you have a flyer. What you're going to do with that flyer image is there's going to be a flyer, Dungeons and Dragons. You're going to take that flyer image that we have under Hyperpin. Now remember, this is a folder that we download. You're going to copy that, and then what you're going to do is you're going to find the folder that you have on your computer where you actually have your media, which is right here. And then I'm going to say Hyperpin. I'm going to say flyer images, back, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste that. Okay, now what you see now is when you look at here, you're going to see there's my Dungeons and Dragons under my flyer images. Now I'm going to move this, I'm going to show you the next thing to do. Now if I go back to the folder, that's the backglass, that's the back image for the flyer. Now if you go to the next one, there's a front image for the flyer. You're going to go ahead and say you're going to copy that. Then you're going to go ahead and go back to your folder. Now you're going to go to the one that says front. Now remember, this is installed on my computer already. I'm just adding it to these folders. These are already installed under Hyperpin. Now I'm going to say paste. Okay. Now I have the actual folder under here as well. As you can see, there's Dungeons and Dragons. Now that's in here as well. As you can see right there. Okay. Now that takes care of the media folder. Now you're going to notice there's images and there's images and other things as well. When I go back to the folder I downloaded, okay, now I'm going to go to instruction cards. Now what instruction cards is, that's what actually tells you how to play the game. Now what you're going to do is you're going to say select all. Then you're going to say copy. Now I'm going to take these and I'm going to put these under the folder that has my instruction cards. Now if I go to my hyperpin folder on my computer, there's instruction cards. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy and paste those. Okay. Now what that's going to do is those are going to be the actual cards that tell you how to play the game. Now here's the part that's very important. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to download. Next thing we're going to go ahead and install the visual pinball tables next. Now remember the folder I downloaded. Go to visual pinball. There's your backglass image. You're going to say copy. You're going to take your backglass image and you're going to put it in your folder under hyperpin on your computer, and you're going to find the one for backglass image. Now you're going to see here's my visual pinball installed on my computer. There's backglass image. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste that into the backglass images. There's the backglass image. Now you want to do the same thing again. Go to the next folder. Under the ones you downloaded, find the one for table images. You're going to say copy. Okay, you're going to go back to your folder on your computer. And you're going to say table image, and you're going to copy and paste those. So 1 second, let me go back. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and paste that. Okay, now I have my table image. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the folder I downloaded. We're going to go to wheel images. That's going to be a wheel image. So we're going to say copy that. Now we're going to put that in our wheel image, under the wheel images that we have on the computer. Okay. Okay, now we have our wheel images. Now here's the important part to keep in mind. You're going to notice on here that all these hyperpin folders. Okay, let me go back and I can show you what we originally downloaded. Now you're going to notice under hyperpin, under media, remember the one we downloaded. You're going to notice that these all have a name. Now you see that it says Dungeons and Dragons Bally 1987. Everything that is underneath this category has to have that same name. Now, normally under the HP, normally when you download the media packs, like the instruction cards, normally they have everything labeled correctly under here, so there isn't a problem. But you want to check that just to be sure. Same thing with Visual Pinball. You notice they all have the same name, Dungeons and Dragons Bally 1987. Same thing with table images, Dungeons and Dragons 1987. And then we go back here, Dungeons and Dragons 1987. Now, what you're going to want to do is, you're going to basically want to have everything named the same. This includes the visual pinball table images and the videos I showed you earlier that we downloaded. So what you're going to do is you want to say copy and paste. This is the safest way to do this. Say copy. Okay, you're going to copy this name. Now what you're going to want to do is you go back to your main folder that we downloaded. Remember what we downloaded? Now you see how you have DUD 1.3, DUD Dungeons & Dragons Bally 1987, Dungeons & Dragons Direct DBS. These all have to be the same name. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with the first one. This is the table image. This is the actual table that they created. You're going to say rename, and then you're going to say you're going to hit paste. You're going to say rename, and then you're going to hit paste. Now, if you need to get the name back, just go back to your hyperpin folder that you had, where your media is. Okay. Then do a copy. Okay, and then you're going to go back to what you downloaded, and you're going to do a paste. Okay. You say rename, and then you say paste. Now, bear with me 1 second. Okay. Okay, I say rename, copy. Okay, now go back to your main folder. Now, sometimes this is a little temperamental. You just have to be patient with it. You're going to say rename, and then you're going to say paste. Now you notice it says Dungeons & Dragons 1987. That's the same thing I have under all my hyperpin folder files that I have, such as the name of the folder images and the flyer images and the backglass and the wheel. All these have to be the same. Do the same thing here. Okay? Rename, paste. Then the same thing with the last one. Rename, paste. Now you see how all the names are the same? This is very important. If one of these names is off, it'll cause the thing not to run properly. And that's one of the things you want to be careful of. Now that I have all my HyperPin folders done and loaded, I can delete that folder. Okay. Okay. Now let me go ahead and close. I want to close this out. Okay, let me go back to my downloads. Okay, I want to go ahead and I want to delete that HyperPin folder since I'm done with it. Okay, now we actually have our three names here. Now what we're going to do is, you see where that says Dungeons & Dragons F4V? That's the actual table video. We're going to do a copy on that. Okay, we're going to go back to our HyperPin folder, and if you notice under HyperPin, there's a thing for media. When you go to Visual Pinball, you're going to see a thing that says Table Videos. When you click on Table Videos, that's where you actually paste this file that has a table video of it playing. As you can see, we pasted it in there. Now we have Dungeons & Dragons right here. Okay, now here's the next important part. What we need to do now is, when you remember I showed you in the video, I showed you how the wheel and everything works with the names on it. Well, we got to make sure that when we use HyperPin, we have to make sure it can find these folders as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a rename. We're going to do a copy. Now what we're going to do now is, under HyperPin, there's a folder called Databases. You click on Databases under Visual Pinball. Okay. Now we're going to go to Edit. Okay. Now what you're going to see on here, all the pinball tables that I have on my folder, on my game, all the pinball folders I have are here. You're going to notice that the names and everything are here. When I run my my HyperPin, these are all the names that are on my HyperPin wheels. You can see here. Right now there's 168 different ones. Okay. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to go all the way to the bottom to the next available slot that you have. Okay. Now as you can see here, I have a slot right here available. Now I had one earlier I didn't use, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to replace this. What you're going to want to do is, you're going to want to put this in here, right in the middle. Okay, you want to make sure you have it between these brackets. Okay, you're going to go. We're going to go say paste. Okay, got the same thing with the bottom one. The game name and the descriptions are the two that you have to change. So you got the same thing here. Okay, we're going to go and we're going to say paste. Okay. Now I actually have my Dungeons & Dragons games listed, and I have them listed under HyperPin. So when I go to the HyperPin wheel, this actually will appear under my HyperPin. Then you want to go to File, and you want to go to Save. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click Save one more time. Now, one of the things I suggest you do, if you're not familiar with how this works, if you want to be as a safeguard, now I've used this for a lot of years, so I don't really have a problem with this. What you want to do is, what I suggest you do is, this XML document for Visual Pinball, this is a very important document that you have for your HyperPin. If you mess up a name on here when you're adding one or you're taking one off, it can cause problems. So what I suggest you do is, as a safeguard, go ahead and do a copy, and go ahead and take this and paste this on your desktop. Okay? Now, as you can see, I have it right here. Okay? There's the folder I copied that has the HTML. The reason that's important is if you screw that folder up, it can be very difficult to fix it. So by having this, you have a backup. You have a backup plan in case you messed up. You have the original one here, and it gives you the option to fix it. So it gives you the option to fix it if you need to by having the original one in case you screw something up. And that's one of the things I recommend that you do is have a backup. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and click that off. Now the point we're at now is we just downloaded the video. Table video is loaded into the table video, so we can delete that. Okay. Now what that leaves us with is it just leaves us with these two folders. We have Dungeons & Dragons, the direct backglass image. We have Dungeons & Dragons, the table image. Now we're going to say on these, we're going to say select all. We're going to say copy. And now we're actually going to go to our Visual Pinball folder where we have our Visual Pinball tables. We go to Visual Pinball, under Tables. These are all the tables. Now we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and we're going to paste this in. Okay, now we actually have our Dungeons and Dragons up here. Now remember, these need to be the same name. The playfield image and the table image and the backlash image all have to be the same. Backlash image, Dungeons and Dragons, direct to BS2 file, and then the VPT file is for the table image. The VPT file is the actual table image that they've edited on Visual Pinball. That's the actual table itself that's been edited on Visual Pinball. Those are called VPT files. The direct B2S files are for the backglasses. All right, now we're basically ready now to start our table out and test it out and see if it works. Okay, now we're going to go to our Visual Pinball program that we have. Okay, we're going to go to Open. Now you can't see what I'm doing here because I'm actually doing it on the lower screen. But what I'm doing is I'm actually finding the actual table here, and then I'm going to click on this when I find it and load it into Visual Pinball. Okay. Okay, I found my Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now here's what it looks like when you load it in. This is what it actually looks like. There's Dungeons and Dragons Bally 1987. Now what you're going to notice is when you want to use the script file, when you want to use the backglass, you have to edit the script in a lot of cases to make that work. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to Script under the table. Okay? And this is what it's going to look like. This is what basically tells the pinball exactly what you want it to do when you load it into Visual Pinball. That's what this does. Okay? Now as you're going to see on this one, there's a thing here that says Global Configurations. If you want to use your B2S backglass, it says set to 1 if you're using a B2S backglass. Okay, we are doing that. So what we want to do is want to set this to 1. Set this to 1. Okay, now there's extensive things on the internet that will actually tell you how to do this editing of the scripts. Okay, this is just very basic, but now it says it wants me to set it to 1, so I'll set that to 1. Okay. Now, basically, what I'm telling this is I'm telling the Visual Pinball that I want it to use the backlash that I've loaded in as well by changing that. Now, what you're going to want to do is, once you have that done, you're going to say Script, you're going to say Compile. And what that's going to do is that's going to put the new value and everything in it when you run the game. Now, as you can see on here, there's a whole bunch of things here that tell the game how to run. As you can see here. Okay? Now, you're going to say Compile, as I've done here. Then you're going to want to exit out. Now, what's going to happen when you exit out, you're going to see a thing that says, do you, and you say yes. What that's going to do is that's going to basically tell Visual Pinball that you want to run it with the backlash. All right, now what we're going to do is now for the fun part, we're actually going to try to run the table. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Open, and there's our Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now we're going to actually go ahead and try to play the table. Okay, then as you can see now, the table's actually running. Okay, let me take the camera out so you can see the table actually running. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the camera now a little further away so I can show you this, what the whole thing looks like when you have it set up and running. Okay, now you can see now we have the actual table now is running. Okay. Now let me show you something. Let me go and show you something. Now you're going to see that I have the table running down below. This is a VPT file, and then I have the backlash images on the backlash here. So remember, the VPT is the table image. The backlash, the B2S is the backlash image that you see here with the lights and things. Now I'm going to show you something really cool about these backglasses. If you click on the backlash image, with your mouse. Now remember, this is if you're running it under Visual Pinball, not when you're running it under Hyperpin. This is what the actual Visual Pinball. You'll notice that my mouse and things here I can edit, because this is the actual scripted version that you can use to run it. If you right click on your mouse, this is going to bring up the BT2S backglass server information on how you want to run it. Now, for example, if you want the DMD hidden, you can have it hidden. If you want it visible, you can have it visible. There's all sorts of options you can do in here, based on how you want to set up. You can use Dream LEDs if you want to look like LEDs or simple LEDs. This is the area where you can do the editing for the backglass server here. That's what this is. If you have a fantasy mode, if you see where it says general mode and it says fantasy, some of the backglasses actually have a fantasy mode that you can run this in as well. Let me move the camera so you can see this a little bit better. Okay. Yeah, you're going to see, so this is going to be the window that's going to have everything on. Let me move this just a little bit so you can see a little bit better what I'm looking at. Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay, let me take this off the stand just for a second so I can show this to you. It's a little hard to see at the angle I'm at, so I got to move it. Okay, here you go. Yeah, now this is called the B2S backglass server. Now what it is this is different options you have for running the backglass. It's like, do you want to have LEDs? Different things that you want to run. And what you want to do is this actually will tell you how everything's going to run. If you like the way it's running, you just click close, okay, and then that basically will bring it back. Now you can see I have a backglass image and I have a table image running. Okay, let me get the table image for you. So as you can see, there's backglass running, and now there's a table image running. Now we're going to go ahead and now to start a game, you do what we did before. Just click the credit button. Okay, now as you can see now, we actually have the table now, basically ready to go, and now it's ready to play. Okay, now what we're going to do now is we're going to exit out. I want to show you something now involving the actual Hyperpin itself. Okay, so let me go ahead and go back and put this back on the stand. I'm going to show you something involving the Hyperpin that we set up as well. Okay, let me set this up so you can see this. Be about the right angle. Okay. And we're going to exit out. Okay, now we know everything is running. Now remember, now we're going to check and see what it looks like under Hyperpin. Now remember, when you're using Hyperpin, as I said before, you always want to make sure that it's running in Visual Pinball first. Always run your tables in Visual Pinball first before you load them in the Hyperpin. Now remember, we have it loaded in Hyperpin because remember when we installed the backglass images and the instruction cards and the flyers, those are already in Hyperpin. Now I'm going to bring up my Hyperpin, and we should be able to find it. Okay? Okay, the Hyperpin's going to come up. Okay, now there's my Hyperpin. Now what you're going to, something I wanted to point out that I didn't say earlier on here. You're going to notice on here that there's numbers. You'll notice that if you remember when I showed you the databases, these are different numbers. These are tables that I haven't added yet. Like where the 10 is, the 7, the 8, the 9. These are tables that haven't been added yet. This is the tables that I can add later on. Remember I showed you how I copy and pasted those? Well, basically that's how it works when you're doing that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and find Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. Okay, there's Dungeons and Dragons. Now remember I showed you what the table image looks like? There's the table image. And you see that there's a table image there. And you're also going to notice too, there's also a backglass image as well. Table and backglass together. Remember we copy and pasted those into those folders? That's what they do. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something really cool here too. Do you remember that we copy and pasted the instruction cards? Well, if we go to this, we go to the flyer images, and I click on this, there's the flyers. Remember the folders that remember when we downloaded the HyperPin Media Pack and it had the folders? Well, there's the folders. That's how you get them in there. And then you can and if there's more than one page, you can actually flip through that. As you can see, it's all under there. And those are the actual flyers. Now, if you want to know how to play the game, this will tell you how to play the game. Remember the page? Remember all the stuff we copy and pasted? There it is. Okay, so that's basically how you go about setting up. Now, if I want to play the game, then it would just be like I normally do. Let me go ahead and move this back so you can see what it looks like when I load the game up. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and load the game up. Now you're going to notice that it's going to load the table in. Okay. Okay, it's going to come up in a second. Okay, there's the actual table all ready to go and to be played. So that's how you go about loading a table from the VP forum site into your visual pinball cabinet. Now, the thing to keep in mind is sometimes you may run into a problem. Now, I'll show you a problem I ran into one time. Just to show you one of the basic things I ran into. One time when I was downloading these, I had a backlash image, but I had no table video because I had the wrong name under the table video. Remember, all the files have to be the same name. The table image, the backlash image, all the VPT files, all have to be the same name. Very, very important that they're all the same name. Now, the only exception to that rule is the ROMs. Remember, the ROMs, you paste those into the folder. You don't rename those. They go directly into the VP, under your VP pin main ROMs. Just use the name of the actual ROM file itself. Don't change the name on those, but everything else has to be the same. And that basically is how we go about loading a thing onto our table. And then basically that's how we do it. And all these tables that you see on here work the same way. It's all done basically the same way. You know, you load it in. Remember, they like Elvira and the Party Monster. They've all been loaded. They've all been loaded in previously under Visual Pinball. I've already run them under Visual Pinball, as you can see, and it's going to load it in. See? Okay. I hope that this video has been helpful for you. Now remember, if you're having trouble running your visual pinball tables, or you're having trouble using HyperPin, there's a lot of instructional videos and things and everything I showed you. I have a few on my channel that will help you out as well. But also, if you go to VP forums, they also have extensive tutorials and also help guides and things as well that I've gone through. Now keep in mind, I've been building these for about 2-3 years, and I've been building these tables. I've actually had them longer than that. The actual pinball cabinets I've actually built for longer than that. But to get the actual HyperPin to work, this is how long it's taken to get everything to work. About 2 to 3 years to get everything running like you see here. So the main thing is just to have patience and have fun. And I want to thank you again for tuning in to the Kurt Space channel here on YouTube, and we'll catch you in the next video. Have a great day now. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye now. And I wanted to mention, if you want to check out other HyperPin videos I have on my channel, there are quite a few on my channel, in addition to visual pinball tables as well. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.